The Delta Force armory was never quiet. The low hum of fluorescent lights mixed with the metallic clicks of rifles being stripped, oiled, and reassembled by some of the best soldiers on Earth. It was sacred ground, where warriors prepared for war. But on this particular morning, the sound everyone noticed wasn't the sharp click of bolts or the rattle of gear. It was the slow, deliberate sound of an old bolt sliding into place, calm, rhythmic, and familiar. At the far end of the armory, sitting on a wooden stool, was an old man in a maintenance uniform. His hands, steady despite their wrinkles, moved with precision as he cleaned an M4 rifle that looked older than most of the soldiers in the room. His name tag read Harris. Most thought he was just the armory janitor, a quiet veteran the base had hired for odd jobs. He kept to himself, spoke rarely, and moved like someone who'd carried heavy burdens longer than most had been alive. Then Sergeant Miller, the youngest sniper in the unit, walked past him and froze. His eyes locked on the rifle in the old man's hands. There was something engraved on the barrel. Something that shouldn't have been there. He leaned closer. And when he read the words, his blood ran cold. Every man in the room stopped what they were doing as Miller's voice trembled out loud. "Sir, where did you get that weapon?" The old man looked up slowly. His eyes, pale and calm, met the sergeant's. "I didn't get it, son," he said quietly. "I was issued it." The room went dead silent. The Delta operators, elite, confident, unshakable, now found themselves shifting uneasily. Sergeant Miller swallowed hard, pointing to the rifle. "That engraving," he said. "That's the serial from the 89 mission, Mogadishu." Every man in the room froze. Even the clatter of distant tools stopped. The name alone, Mogadishu, carried weight. It wasn't just a battlefield. It was a blood-soaked page in American history. The old man gave a faint nod. "I was there," he said softly. Though not many walked out. Lieutenant Brooks, the team leader, approached with a frown. "Sir, with respect, that mission was classified. The men who survived, they're on record." "There's no Harris listed," the old man smirked faintly. "That's because they erased me, son. Said it was cleaner that way." The room stirred. The operators exchanged glances. Men who'd faced death countless times, suddenly feeling the weight of something older, darker. Brooks gestured at the rifle. "May I?" The old man hesitated, then handed it over. The weapon was perfectly balanced, worn smooth from decades of care. On the underside of the barrel, engraved deep into the steel, were the words, "For the fallen, 10-3-93. Brooks ran a thumb across the letters. His breath caught when he saw the next line, smaller, almost hidden. "R. Brooks. Cover me." Brooks's eyes widened. That was his father's name. The lieutenant stumbled back, his voice cracking. You knew my father?" The old man's gaze softened. He stood slowly, leaning on his cane. "Knew him," he said. "I carried him out when everyone else fell." A heavy silence filled the room. The younger Brooks blinked hard, struggling to find words. The old man looked down at the rifle like it was an old friend. He took a round to the leg. "We were pinned, out of ammo. I told him to crawl. He said no, said someone had to hold the line. I told him I'd stay. He said, 'You've got a son waiting for you. Go.'" His voice broke for the first time. "I went, but not far. Came back when the dust settled. He was gone." Brooks felt his knees weaken. For years, he'd heard fragments of his father's story, a classified mission, a lost unit, no body recovered. And now, the man who'd been there was standing right in front of him, holding the same rifle his father had carried. Sergeant Miller whispered under his breath, "That's impossible." "That's 30 years ago," the old man smiled faintly. "It feels like yesterday." The tension in the room melted into something else. Reverence. The operators gathered around him, their faces hard yet respectful. Brooks asked quietly, "Why come back here?" "Why this base?" The old man took a slow breath. "Because every year on the date of that mission, I come to clean the rifles. I was part of the team that designed the original Delta weapons program, back when this place was just concrete and dirt." He looked at the rifle again. "This one was supposed to be scrapped. But I kept it. Figured it deserved better than a melting pit." Miller frowned. "Sir, why not tell anyone who you were?" "Men like you should be honored." The old man shook his head slowly. "Honor doesn't bring back the ones who didn't make it. And I don't want medals. I want peace." He turned the rifle over, tracing the engraving with his thumb. Your generation fights different wars, cleaner, smarter, but remember, courage doesn't come from your weapon. It comes from who you fight for. The men stood quietly, absorbing every word. The air felt heavy, sacred. Hours later, as the sun began to set outside, the old man sat alone on the bench again, his tools neatly packed away. The rifle rested beside him, gleaming in the last rays of light. Brooks walked out to him, holding a folded piece of paper. "Sir, my father wrote this letter. It was sent to my mom after he died. I've read it 1,000 times, but there's one line I never understood until today." He unfolded it and read softly. "If you ever meet a man named Harris, tell him I owe him the rest of my life." The old man's lips trembled. He looked down, fighting emotion. "He never owed me a thing," he whispered. Brooks knelt beside him. "Sir, I think you owe each other something else. Closure." For a moment, the two sat in silence. Then Brooks extended his hand. The old man hesitated, then took it firmly, soldier to soldier. "Thank you," Brooks said quietly. "For my father. For everything." The old veteran nodded. "He was the best man I ever knew." The next morning, the Delta Force operators gathered in formation outside the armory. Their commander stood at the front, but beside him, where no one had stood in decades, was an empty stool. A rifle laid across it and a folded note taped to the stock. Brooks stepped forward, eyes stinging as he read the note aloud. "Cleaned one last time. For the fallen. Harris." The operators stood in silence, each man raising his hand in salute. The old man never returned to the base. Some said he'd gone back to his hometown. Others whispered he was finally buried among the men he'd once served with. But on the rifle stock, beneath the engraving that started it all, someone had etched a new line. "Heroes fade, legends remain." And from that day forward, every new recruit who entered Delta's armory saw that rifle, gleaming under glass. A silent reminder that greatness doesn't always wear stars or stripes. Sometimes, it just carries a rag and an old rifle waiting for one last salute.